Yo, what is going on, guys? My name is Cal. Welcome back. I've got another video for you. This is a craft specific video, and I know this is kind of what I promised really when I started doing videos, and I really had to upload this one because this one is just absolutely insane. The amount of RNG that I actually happen to hit here is pretty ridiculous. It could be better, of course. It can always be better unless you have proper crafting in the game. You're always at a slot machine. But this one is really, really nice, and we're going to do a little breakdown of how I was able to make this item. So let's take a look at it here. This is essentially what I was able to hit. This chest is absolutely ridiculous. I was looking for, basically a friend of mine came to me and he goes, hey, I want something really, really good, because he's basically giga investing into his tornado shot Omniscience stacker. And if you saw the last video that I uploaded, I was talking about the build being squishy. This is one of the ways that you can kind of go about improving defenses on the build. And you would kind of have to do this for a lot of the slots, whilst having like the life gain on Hit Watcher's Eye, for example, or even having Mage Blood and things like that that I mentioned. So this chest, pretty insane, right? Like if you look at it, it has every single mod on here is desirable in every single way. There's not one dead stat. So how did I really go about hitting this? Now, unfortunately, I did not have the recording going when he initially came to me because I didn't think he really wanted to invest that much. But this was some of the most insane RNG that I've ever had on this game, and I've been playing since patch 3.0, Harbinger League, right? So, the implicit here, the Searing Exarch mod, increased effect of non-curse auras from your skills. This is a T1, so this actually requires the use of exceptional Eldritch Ichors and Orbs of Conflict to basically elevate this mod all the way up. Because essentially what you're doing is every time you're going to use an Orb of Conflict and you raise it, you're going to have to then go ahead and use a higher tier of the Conflicting Influence to kind of give you a 50-50 shot of raising this. Now what's insane about this, I started with the lesser tier, so I actually used the lesser Embers to roll the non-curse auras, and I've actually been using Orbs of Conflict the entire way to bring it from 10%, I think it's 9 to 10% is what it starts at, and I brought it all the way up to 19 to 20. And what's more insane about this is that I never bricked one of these Orbs of Conflict. Every single orb that I used was successful the entire way. I cannot believe this even happened. I've never seen something this ridiculous in all my different crafting projects that I've done. This is easily one of the most insane items. If I had to ballpark the value of this chest, assuming, somebody wanted to sell this, and again, it could be better because the ideal scenario is to have the crafted modifier that I put on here, avoid elemental ailments and stunned. That would be the mod that you would want to be unveiled from Ashling, because it gives a higher tier, and then you would craft on the life and mana that I have there, which is what I got from the Ashling. But we'll get into that a little bit more. I might show some Craft of Exile examples. But essentially, once you have this chest, let's say you buy the 6-link base, you're going to quality it up. I actually used a couple perfect fossils that I had of my own, and I hit 30% quality. From there, you just use essences of either Rage or Spite, and the reason why you want to do that is because this is an evasion base, so Dexterity is a natural stat. It's more likely to roll, I believe, than Strength and Intelligence, so you want to use Strength and Intelligence essences in the Deafening tier. And if you're not familiar with those, basically just like these, right, you're going to be using these, and I don't think I have any, I don't have any spites, I used all of them. So this is essentially what you're looking for. You're going to essence spam until you get decent suffixes. Now I got really, really lucky on this, I think, because getting T2 of an attribute and then T2 spell suppression, ideally what you're shooting for is T3, but really if you can hit T2 spell suppression or above, it's really, really good. Then from there, you actually just let the influence take over. All you have to do is influence to reroll the prefixes, and then you're good to go. Because the beauty of crafting this is that we use these orbs. So all we have to do is essentially keep the Searing Exarch as dominant, and the Searing Exarch are all the orange currencies, right? So we have the Searing Exarch dominant, and that's how we can reroll the prefixes. So basically what I was doing is just constantly blocking and annulling, and I was always guaranteed to annul a prefix. Now what ended up happening, I actually used this Eldritch Exalt and I slammed T1 life, which is really, really good. So I figured, I told my friend it's worth it to probably invest a little bit more and risk it. And so we did suffixes cannot be changed, which is a little bench craft over here. You just throw this on and you would craft this on. And then after you do that, that's 2 Exalt craft. Then I go to TFT, the Forbidden Trove Discord server, and I bought a T4 Ashling, which is a 50-50 chance to hit. Now, unfortunately, it took the T1 life that I had, but I told him it's worth it still to really unveil it and then Exalt Slam it, since we have the luxury of safely annulling. So I actually Exalt Slammed T3 life back on after losing my T1 life. So this is really just an amazing chest. It was such a fun crafting project to actually put together, because it actually came together really, really quickly. It didn't take as long as I thought it was going to take. And the implicits was actually the hardest part, because getting the increased effect of auras, it requires, when you get to the high end, it requires exceptional Eldritch Ichors, and these Ichors are going for realistically over 50 chaos in bulk. They're very, very expensive, so this is a very costly craft, and it's only because he got insanely lucky, well, I got insanely lucky with my RNG, that he got this really, really sick chest. And then after you hit the level of increased effect of auras that you really want, you can stop at any point, by the way. You don't need to go all the way up. I would say realistically you shouldn't be going past even greater. Greater would be the absolute max. I wouldn't go past those currencies, because you're going to have to use Orbs of Conflict every time, and the combination of these plus the overall cost of the upgraded Ichor and Embers, it adds up. Like, you'll realistically be paying upwards of, let's say, probably 5, 6, 7 or more Exalts just to get a realistic like tier that you would be happy with. So after that, after you have your tier that you're happy with, then you just kind of use the Eater of Worlds. You use whatever tier of orb you want from the Eater of Worlds, and you actually just roll. You just roll constantly until you hit Anger or Determination. It depends if you want to go more defensive, like I was mentioning in the last video. Like, you're essentially super squishy on this build unless you make a lot of changes, and for people who are not using a lot of currency, it can feel really, really bad. You have to kind of make a lot of sacrifices when you're gearing up the character, but it can be done. So if you're going for a chest like this, I think realistically you want to go big damage, so why not go for Anger Aura effect? You obviously can go for the defensive approach as well, if you really, really want to. So that's really it. I'm going to show now a couple Craft of Exile examples, and you guys will kind of see, you know, the overall process that I kind of went through. But this was, again, just such an insane chest to make. I found one guy that was similar for 70 Exalts, but he had a hybrid armor evasion piece. Pretty cool as well. But I would imagine that this chest, like I said, I would say 70, 80 or more Exalts, just because it's perfect on the Searing Exarch, and every single mod is desirable. If it had elevated, well, I call them elevated, but, you know, the Ashling unveiled avoid elemental ailments instead of the life and mana, and then I crafted on the life and mana, it would have been far more appealing and probably far more worthwhile, or valuable rather, as an item. But this really was just an amazing craft. So I'm gonna go into Craft of Exile now, and I'll kind of show you guys just a little bit, you know, what I was really doing when I was crafting this, in case you want more clarification. So let's take a look over there. All right, now we're in Craft of Exile, so let's take a look here at just some examples. I'm not going to go through the full crafting process. I will kind of skip ahead just to show you, like, the process or the steps. But essentially, once you have your 6-link Zodiac Leather, you don't necessarily need to have item level 86. It's just the most convenient, I think, in this process, because you're looking for essentially tier 1 spell suppression if possible. So you don't necessarily need tier 1, but it's still nice to have the option. So here we hit like T3, for example. In cases like this, sometimes it's not terrible. It just depends what kind of investment you're going for. We're looking for double attribute and spell suppression. So you essentially spam, and this will cost a lot. This one here is really nice. It's a shame it doesn't have another suffix. Depending on how rich you might be feeling, you actually could lock this, not lock with the benchcraft, but use the influences new influences to potentially control where you're going to annul if you kind of want to go that route, and then you would have to exalt slam. It's not necessarily worth it. Like, let's say you just added this to the influence and then you just exalt slammed it. You could do things like this if you kind of really wanted to just kind of play around with it. I would only suggest doing something like this if you hit like tier 1 spell suppression, or if you hit like tier 1 on the second attribute. But essentially that there's always customization, and there are different steps when it comes to these things, and that's why they're a little bit tricky whenever you're doing them. So you just kind of spam like this. You're hoping for something really nice. You can also, if you hit really, really good mods, and you happen to have the Harvest Craft, you can use Reforge more likely. These are other things that there's lots of things you can kind of do to help you kind of achieve your result, but definitely use caution when doing these things and be very careful, because you don't want to potentially mess your item up. So, but in the early steps like this, it's totally fine to do something like this. So let's say you spam. Once you, like here in this case, we hit T1 from the essence, of course, and then we hit T1 dexterity. Now in this case, let's just say if we had spell suppression, let's just say we had T2, this would be your point where you would actually continue. And I would say you don't necessarily need to even have T1 attribute. T2 is fine, even T3. Like if you hit T2 spell suppression or T3 and you have double attribute, and the non-essence attribute is T3 or higher, I honestly would just be fine with that. It's only if you're going for insane investment that you would really want to potentially go for something better. Now, once you have this, your suffixes are quote-unquote finished. And then at that point, let me actually zoom in a little bit so it's a little bit clearer. But at this point, this is when you would start working on the prefixes. And then from here, all you have to do is just influence it. We actually hit the exact mod that we want, which is increased effect of non-curse auras. This is not going to happen. Most times you're going to have to actually put a lot of these embers into it. But once you have this, now you can safely use annuls. So you can take off the prefixes, especially if they're all bad. And then from here, you can then exalt. Now you can also use chaos orbs, but I wouldn't really suggest this because it's a little bit too expensive for my taste. I prefer, just kind of exalting and annulling. You're only looking for realistically one good mod. You can potentially exalt multiple times if you really want, and then chance annulling it, but it's kind of depending on how you want to do it. We're getting like really, really bad life rolls. So what I was doing personally is I would just annul and exalt every single time until I got good life. Now, if you hit really, really good life, then you essentially can start going through the overall process. Now, let's say, because I want to actually show you guys the influence crafting with the implicits. So let's just say we happen to hit, we're slamming life on. Let's just go ahead and remove this. Let's just say we're slamming life on and we hit T2 life. This would be really, really nice. In this case, it's up to you if you want to do this, but you would do suffixes cannot be changed. You buy an ashling or you have one yourself, and then you do it. Hopefully this doesn't happen, but even if this does happen, you can still go ahead and you can block if you want to. Usually it's recommended to block. It's always nice, but you would want to go ahead and craft on. I believe the most common mod that was always a problem was like flat evasion, I think. No, not percent. It was just flat evasion, and I would block. I think I blocked this one. I just did like the lowest tier, and then you go ahead and you unveil the chest, and you're hoping for at least this or the. You're hoping for this or avoid elemental ailments, and then at this point you can then go ahead and try to exalt it. But this is not bad. It's T6 though. You would definitely want something higher, but I wouldn't really suggest this unless you're really looking to push the chest a lot. So in this case, let's say if you have this life, from here you can actually just craft on avoid elemental ailments and then call it a day, and you're pretty much done. You don't have to actually go further than that if you don't want to. you can actually leave it just like this, and it looks really, really good. Now, this is fine, and then you can then work on the implicits, and it's totally up to you what kind of investment you want to go for. Now, at this point, once you have increased effect of aura effects, you're going to need, this is where it's going to get really, really expensive, because you're going to have to start using the Ichors. So let's say you use this one, then you'll start with the greater Ichors because you're trying to elevate your aura effect. So at that point, you'll use the Orb of Conflict. And this is, when this happens, this is where it's really bad. And this is what I was saying, where I got insanely lucky, where it just kept elevating. So when this stuff happens, it just depends. This is why I was saying you want to stop essentially like 14 to 15 or 13 to 14, 15 to 16%. I would probably stop around there unless you have a lot of currency. For me, it was just really, really lucky that I was able to, you know, keep on going. And then it just kept succeeding. I didn't really lose any of the overall investment. So at this point, you would use this again, and then you're going to use the Orb of Conflict again. And then if this happens, again, really bad, you're looking for this to elevate, and if it just doesn't, it just really feels bad. At this is what you want here. So you can see just how many times it's a 50-50, so this can happen. Once you get this to a point that you're happy with, then you just kind of stop. Once you're here, this is where it'll keep getting more and more expensive. So you kind of have to take that into consideration depending on the prices of the items, of the currencies rather, on trade. But this is, you have to use your own judgment here. So we have 13 to 14% now. The next step here is to use the exceptional Eldritch Ichor, if I'm not mistaken. And then we use the Orb of Conflict again. And here in this case, it downgrades. So this, I would say once you get to 15 and 16, like I've said many times, stop right here. And then from here, once you have an amount of aura effect that you're satisfied with, at this point, then you just start, you can take whatever tier of embers you would like to use, or sorry, Ichors that you would like to use. I would probably go somewhere around Greater or Grand. They're going to be relatively expensive in bulk, so I would say honestly Grand or Greater is your safer bet. And then you just kind of spam. Like Determination Aura Effect, especially if you're starting out and you're on a budget, I would say hitting something like this is really, really good. And this is perfectly fine for you to keep for now. Of course, it totally depends on how much investment you want to use. You can keep on doing this. You have two options. There's Unique Enemy in your presence, and there's just straight up flat, like this one here, Purity of Lightning. You can hit things like this, or you can hit when a unique enemy is in your presence and you're looking for Anger or Determination. And again, if you happen to hit Determination early on, I would say that's fine. If you're going for a more defensive approach, it's not bad to stop. The good thing about this is that there's no actual issue doing this. You can pick up where you left off and continue. So like this one right here, you would want Anger has increased aura effect, and you could actually just leave it just like that. Now there's a lot of mods in this pool, and there's a lot of tiers depending on which, you know, Ember or Ichor you're trying to use. So just remember all of these things. Now if you hit this, your chest is done. You have a very nice chest that's going to serve you, you know, really well for your build for a long time, and it's obviously something you can resell as well. So let me know what you guys think. I know this was a longer video. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like on the video if you've made it this far. I appreciate it. Remember to subscribe, leave a comment if you would like to see more videos like this, and I will see you guys in the next video. My name is Kal. Thanks for watching.